Listed as a launch title by several sources, despite coming out a few days later than the console in Japan and months later in North America, nevertheless, the first sports game in the new library is, at the very least, not a basketball game. My God, what a stain on the DMG's library was the sports section. It has something like a 90% failure rating, with only a small handful of notably good games scattered throughout the plethora of dross. Now, I had to look this up, but it turns out bowling is actually a sport. I speak with zero authority or interest on the subject, but apparently the way to tell is that you have to change your shoes to play it. Being an event with quite a limited potential, there was only one bowling game on the original Game Boy, and it came out really early. After World Bowling basically did everything, which is to say not that much, there wasn't really anywhere else to take the kids' birthday party pastime. Having said that, there are at least double that amount this time round, the first of which came from the same developers as that 1990 title, Athena. 10-pin bowling would materialize in August of 1999, and oddly, actually snuck in 2 weeks before this one arrived in North America. Why is that important? Well, it ain't. Unless, like me, you find such mundane details interesting, but I have to fill this review with something. Something that is perhaps slightly more interesting is that there was to be a version made for Game Boy Color of Atomic Planet Entertainment's PS2 and Xbox title AMF Extreme Bowling. This was cancelled because of course it was. Not only were the console versions atrocious, but they didn't come out until 2006, long after the Game Boy Color had already been superseded by the Advance. How someone even came up with the idea of releasing a new GBC game in 2006 is anyone's guess. There are 5 characters you can choose from, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. One of them is a giant penguin and is therefore obviously the correct choice, given the Game Boy's already lucrative relationships with those adorable dafties. Literally my favourite animal, by the way. You can get loads of speed from some, but chances are they'll be less accurate and can't swerve as much. It's all about personal preference. The game is well balanced enough that no one character is obviously better than the others. You'll press A to do everything, set the aim, gauge the amount of spin, then the amount of power behind the throw. Learn all the sweet spots of all 3 coupled with your preferred character to reliably get those strikes every time. It appears as though all the pins are represented by their own sprites, which is a good thing, and this time around, Athena managed to get the collision detection between ball and pin much more accurate. In World Bowling, if you remember, follow the link at the end of the video to watch my review of that if you don't, all too often the ball would look like it was ghosting straight through the object, whereas other times you'd clearly miss, but the game would consider it a hit. Much better this time around, although that's not to say the physics are realistic exactly. The Game Boy Color was a stronger console than the DMG, not by much, admittedly, but it still lacked that FPU processor required for the sort of interactions between pins and that sort of thing, so don't expect to be able to clip pin 8 into pin 10 or anything like that. Still, if in 1999 you had a craving for a portable bowling experience, this was probably as good as it got.